She said I was too disorganized to own a house, then handed my deed to my brother. My mom smiled while signing the transfer forms in front of my daughter. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, not even when Emily whispered, "We thought it was best." They staged the entire party just to distract me while they stole my future, my own family, treating me like a charity case. But they don't know I'm a bookkeeper. I photograph everything. And Maya's warning wasn't just a phone call. It was a countdown. Now I've got 3 days, one hidden ally, and every receipt they thought I'd never keep. Let them toast. I'll take the house. They tried to bury me, but I grew stronger roots. My name is Laura Bennett, and I'm 45 years old. I live in a modest 2-bedroom house with my teenage daughter Emily, stretching my bookkeeper's salary to keep our post-divorce home intact. My mother Evelyn measures success in square footage and bank statements, while my brother Mark, a real estate agent, speaks only in property values and investment returns. The familiar scent of my cinnamon cake cools on Mom's kitchen counter as paper birthday garlands scratch against my wrists and forced laughter clinks like wine glasses at a wake. Mom's endless lectures about fiscal responsibility and Mark's sideways comments about my professional limitations sting less these days. What they don't know is that I've documented every transaction, every email, every family loan with a bookkeeper's precision. But let me start from the beginning. You know how sometimes you can feel wrong before you know why? That's how it started, setting Mom's birthday table while trying not to wrinkle the fancy cloth she only brings out for special occasions. The late afternoon sun slanted through her dining room windows, catching dust motes that danced around Emily as she arranged those trick candles she loves so much, the ones that keep relighting no matter how hard you blow. "Careful with those, honey," I called out, straightening the silverware for the 4th time. "Your grandmother's not as young as she used to be." Emily just nodded, not meeting my eyes. That should have been my first clue. Mark kept bustling between the kitchen and den, shepherding relatives like some corporate tour guide. Every time he passed, whispers would trail behind him like perfume. Aunt Susan's eyebrows shot up during one of these exchanges, and she quickly found something fascinating to study in her wine glass. You'd think after 20 years of family gatherings, I'd be used to Mom's particular brand of smile, the one that stops dead at her lips while her eyes stay cool as mint. But watching her that afternoon, perched in her favorite armchair like a queen holding court, something felt orchestrated. "Laura, dear," she called out, "those plates aren't going to arrange themselves." I've always documented important moments. Habit of a bookkeeper, I suppose. So when I pulled out my phone to get ready for the cake-cutting video, I made sure to switch it to vibrate. That's when Maya's name lit up my screen. Maya, Emily's best friend since middle school, the girl who practically lived at our house every summer. Why would she be calling during the party? Balancing a stack of dessert plates in one hand, I answered with a whispered, "Hello?" The urgency in Maya's voice sent ice water down my spine. "Get out of that house, now." Her words came fast and low, like she was hiding from someone. "Maya, what are you talking about? Why?" Footsteps approached from the hallway. The line went dead. Have you ever had that moment when you realize you're the only one who doesn't know the script? I walked back into the living room, and suddenly, every detail felt significant. Emily, my own daughter, studying the carpet like it held the secrets of the universe. Mom and Mark huddled over a manila folder, their heads close together, voices too low to catch. When they noticed me watching, the folder vanished faster than cookies at a bake sale. "Time for cake," I announced, forcing cheer into my voice like stuffing into a throw pillow. My hands were shaking so badly I had to set down the plates before I dropped them. "Let's gather around, everyone." The familiar birthday song started up, but all I could hear was Maya's warning echoing in my head. My palms were sweating as I watched the candles throw shadows across faces I'd known all my life, faces that suddenly seemed like strangers, wearing familiar masks. Mom sat there, perfectly poised in her blue dress, while Mark stood behind her chair like some kind of guardian. Emily stayed half hidden behind Aunt Susan, still avoiding my gaze. The whole scene felt staged, like one of those real estate photos Mark uses to sell houses. Everything arranged just so, hiding all the flaws. "Make a wish, Mom," I said, watching the candlelight flicker across her face. She smiled that smile, again, the one that never reached her eyes. "Oh, I already have, dear. I already have." The candles flared bright against the darkening room. As Mom leaned forward to blow them out, I caught Mark's reflection in the window. He was watching me, not her. In that moment before the room went dark, I saw something in his expression that made my stomach drop. Satisfaction. The flames went out, and for a second, we were all in darkness. Someone laughed, nervously. "Where's the light switch?" Aunt Susan called out. But I stayed perfectly still, Maya's warning pulsing in my mind like an alarm bell. While everyone migrated to the den for coffee and gossip, I stayed behind to clean up. You know how it goes. Some folks offer to help, but you wave them off because it's easier to work alone. Besides, I needed a minute to think about Maya's call. I scraped plates and loaded the dishwasher, the familiar routine usually calming my nerves. Not this time. Mom kept popping in and out of the kitchen, herding stragglers toward the den like some kind of social sheepdog. "Laura, don't spend all evening with the dishes," she called over her shoulder. "Though Lord knows someone needs to keep things organized around here." That's when I noticed it. The stack of glossy magazines on her counter, Southern Living on top, wasn't sitting quite right. Manila, folder corners peeked out like guilty secrets between the pages. My heart started hammering against my ribs. Ever since the divorce, I'd developed this habit of photographing important documents, bills, receipts, anything that might matter later. Call it paranoia or just good bookkeeping, but that habit was about to pay off. Glancing toward the den to make sure I was alone, I slid the magazines aside. My hands weren't exactly steady as I opened that folder, but what I saw made them go completely still. There, in crisp black and white, was my name on papers titled Transfer of Title and Durable Power of Attorney. The second one listed Mom, Evelyn Bennett, as the agent. You ever have one of those moments where the world just stops? Where everything you thought you knew suddenly shifts sideways? I pulled out my phone and started snapping pictures, making sure to capture every single page. The legal language swam before my eyes, but certain phrases jumped out like neon signs. Transfer of property, acting in good faith, immediate effect upon execution. Emily's laugh drifted in from the hallway. That thin, nervous laugh she gets when she's uncomfortable. Then Mark's voice, low but clear. "Timing is everything, Mom." My fingers fumbled as I slipped the folder back exactly how I'd found it, carefully arranging those magazines just so. Deep breaths, Laura. Deep breaths. I gripped the edge of the counter until my knuckles went white, forcing my face into what I hoped was a neutral expression. "Remember to smile," I told myself. "Ask about Susan's grandkids. Comment on the weather. Anything normal. Don't let them know you know." I loaded up the coffee service, Mom's good silver tray, the china cups, sugar bowl, and creamer, and carried it into the den. Everyone, was clustered around Mom's chair, like courtiers around a throne. "Just thankful when family steps up," Mom was saying, "especially when someone clearly cannot manage on their own anymore." She paused significantly, and suddenly every eye in the room darted toward me, then quickly away. Like I was some kind of cautionary tale they were too polite to mention directly. The coffee cups clinked against their saucers as I set down the tray. The sound unnaturally loud in the sudden silence. My cheeks burned, but I kept my voice steady as I asked, "Who takes cream?" I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw those papers in their faces and demand answers. But I've learned a few things about timing myself over the years. Making a scene wouldn't help. I needed to understand exactly what I was up against first. And I needed to start with Emily. The dishwasher kicked on with its familiar hum as I caught my daughter's eye. "Em, could you help me with something in the kitchen?" I kept my tone light, casual. She hesitated, then nodded, following me toward the back hallway. Behind us, I heard Mark start another story about his latest real estate deal, his voice carrying that same satisfaction I'd seen in his face earlier. Let him talk, I thought. Let them all think they have me figured out. I guided Emily into the laundry room, that little space where I'd folded countless loads of her clothes over the years. The dryer still had that dent where she'd crashed her bike into it when learning to ride indoors during a rainstorm. Funny how memories pop up at the strangest times, isn't it? Closing the door behind us, I took a deep breath and pulled out my phone. "Em, honey, I need you to look at something." I pulled up the photo I'd just taken, the signature page with my name typed neatly at the bottom, waiting for a signature that would sign away everything. Emily's face went pale. She started fidgeting with the charm bracelet I'd given her for her 16th birthday, a nervous habit she'd never outgrown. "Mom, it's not what you think." "Then tell me what it is." I kept my voice steady, though my stomach was doing backflips. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like someone's trying to take our house." No. Uncle Mark explained everything. She wouldn't meet my eyes. He said you're in trouble with debt, and this is just to keep the house safe. Grandma can protect it until... I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. Debt? Emily, who told you I was in debt? I've never missed a mortgage payment, not one. You know that moment when you realize your own child's been turned against you? It feels like falling through ice, shocking and cold, and desperate all at once. "But Uncle Mark showed me the numbers," she stammered. "He said if we don't act now..." Before she could finish, Mark's voice boomed from the living room. "Everyone, gather round. Time for a toast." Emily's eyes darted toward the door like a trapped animal. "We should go back. This conversation isn't over," I whispered, but I followed her out. What choice did I have? The living room felt different now. All those familiar faces suddenly looked like strangers. Mark stood in the center, champagne flute raised high, every inch the successful real estate broker in his tailored shirt and perfectly knotted tie. "You know what I love about our family?" he asked, sweeping his gaze across the room. "How we take care of our own, how we step up when needed." His eyes landed on me for just a second too long. So here's to responsible adults who take action when others won't. The room murmured in agreement. I watched Mom's knuckles go white around her glass stem, her face fixed in that brittle smile she wears when she's getting exactly what she wants. The champagne turned sour in my mouth. Maya's urgent warning from earlier echoed in my head. "Get out of that house." Now I understood why. They'd been planning this, probably for weeks, maybe months. I could have made a scene right then, could have pulled out my phone and shown everyone those documents. But what good would that do? They'd just deny it, make me look hysterical. No, I needed more than suspicion. I needed proof. The dishwasher hummed in the background, its familiar rhythm now counting down like a timer. 45 minutes until the cycle finished. 45 minutes of smiling through gritted teeth while my own family plotted against me. I caught Emily watching me from across the room, guilt written all over her face. What had Mark shown her? What lies had he used to convince my own daughter I couldn't manage? The questions piled up like the dishes in the sink, but I forced myself to stay calm. Wait it out. Let them think their plan was working. Once everyone went home, once the house was quiet, I'd start looking for answers. Mom clinked her glass against Mark's, beaming at him like he was some kind of savior. "To family," she echoed. And I watched my relatives nod along, every one of them buying into whatever story they'd been fed about poor, incompetent Laura. The dishwasher kept humming, marking time, each minute bringing me closer to midnight, closer to the truth. I just had to hold on, keep my face neutral, and wait. The party wrapped up like most family gatherings. Endless goodbyes at the door, promises to do this again soon, and relatives backing down the driveway with their headlights cutting through the darkness. You ever notice how fake those farewell smiles feel when you know something's wrong? I helped Mom clear the last of the cake plates, fighting the urge to snatch those documents from under the magazines. Not yet. Timing was everything, just like Mark had said, though not the way he meant it. "I'll take the guest room tonight," I told Mom, keeping my voice casual. "Too tired to—" "Drive," she nodded, that same brittle smile still fixed in place. "Of course, dear. Whatever you think is best." The way she said it made my skin crawl. I texted Emily before heading upstairs. "We'll talk tomorrow morning." Then I lay in the guest bed, fully dressed, listening to the house settle. The antique clock in the hallway ticked away 15 minutes, then 30. Mom's door clicked shut, followed by her usual nighttime routine. Bathroom, face cream, white noise machine. Finally, silence. I waited another 10 minutes just to be sure. The carpet muffled my footsteps as I crept down to Emily's room. She was sound asleep, one arm thrown across her face the way she used to nap as a toddler. The sight made my throat tight. Her phone lay charging on the nightstand. No password protection needed. Last year, when she'd cracked her screen, I'd helped her set up the new one. Same code. She'd always used 2504, her best friend Maya's birthday. Funny how the little things you do for your kids can come back around. The message threads were right there. No digging required. Mark's name caught my eye first. "Your mom's heading for foreclosure. We need to act fast." My hands shook as I scrolled up. There it was, all laid out in black and white. Mark, spinning tales about my supposed financial troubles. Mom, pushing for signatures. Before it's too late. And Emily. "Mom will thank us later. She's so stressed about money already." Each message felt like another knife in my back. I started taking screenshots, sending them to my email one by one. Can't tell you how many times my obsession with documentation had saved me during the divorce. Old habits die hard, thank God. Then I saw it, a photo of my house deed with Mark's caption, "Moving this out of her hands." You know, that moment when all the fight just drains out of you? When betrayal hits so hard it leaves you hollow? That's where I was, standing in my daughter's bedroom at midnight, staring at proof that my own family was conspiring against me. I looked at Emily, sleeping there so peacefully. She really thought she was helping me. They'd convinced her so completely that I was drowning, she couldn't even see how they were using her. Carefully, I pulled her, blanket up higher. She always kicks it off in her sleep, and smoothed her hair back from her face. The gesture was so familiar, so normal, it made my eyes sting. Walking back to the guest room, I felt heavier with each step. Maybe they were right. Maybe signing everything over would be easier than fighting. The ceiling fan chopped shadows across the bed, and I watched them spin, remembering all the times Mom had told me I wasn't capable enough, organized enough, strong enough. I set my alarm for dawn, wanting to be gone before the morning interrogation could start. But just as I was about to turn off my phone, I heard it, the distinct creak of Mom's door opening down the hall. The sound froze me in place. It was the same creak I'd heard countless times growing up, usually followed by a lecture about my latest disappointment. Now here I was again, lying in the dark, waiting for judgment. I woke before my alarm, when the sky was still more gray than blue. My mouth felt like cotton, and my head throbbed from a night of fitful sleep. You know those mornings when reality hits you before you're even fully awake? Yeah, it was one of those. The guest room window faced east, and I watched the sunrise paint Mom's pristine backyard in shades of amber. The same yard where I'd played as a kid, where Emily had learned to walk, where so many family memories were rooted. Now it all felt like a stage set for some twisted performance. I pulled on my sweater from yesterday and crept downstairs to make coffee. The house was silent except for the hum of Mom's ancient refrigerator, the one she refused to replace because it still works just fine. Funny how she could be so careful with her own possessions while plotting to take away mine. Standing at the counter, I rehearsed what I might say when everyone woke up. I understand your concerns. Or maybe we should discuss other options. Anything to spare Emily the shame of what they'd done. The words tasted as bitter as the coffee I was brewing. I needed air. Grabbing my mug, I slipped out to the front porch, where the morning frost made everything look like it had been dusted with sugar. The cold bit through my sweater, but I welcomed it. At least it was real. That's when I saw Helen, Mom's next-door neighbor, stepping over the low hedge between their properties. Her wire-haired terrier, Max, trotted beside her, his leash jingling in the quiet morning air. Helen had lived there forever. She'd been ancient when I was a teenager, though she never seemed to age past that point. "You were up late," she said, not really a question. Her voice carried that knowing tone that made me wonder just how much she'd seen. I tried for casual. "Oh, family gatherings." My smile felt plastic. Helen's sharp eyes drifted to Mom's recycling bin by the garage. Even from the porch, I could see strips of manila paper mixed in with the regular trash. My stomach clenched. They'd already shredded something. "Laura," Helen said quietly, "why don't you come over for some real coffee? Mine's better than Evelyn's anyway." Before I could protest, she had her hand on my elbow, steering me across the lawn to her house. Max bounded ahead, clearly familiar with this routine. Helen's kitchen was warm and smelled like cinnamon and coffee, the good kind, not Mom's watered-down breakfast blend. She poured me a cup without asking, the liquid so dark it was almost black. One sip and I felt my fog starting to lift. "2 nights ago," Helen said, settling into her chair, "I was putting out my own recycling when I heard voices by my driveway." She paused, stirring her coffee. "It was your brother Mark, talking to someone on his phone. He seemed very pleased with himself." My hand tightened around my mug. "What did he say?" "We'll have the deed by year's end," Helen quoted, her voice precise. He was quite confident about it. Just like that, something shifted inside me. You know that moment when resignation suddenly turns to resistance? When you realize you're not actually cornered at all. I told Helen everything. Maya's warning call, the transfer documents I'd found, the screenshots from Emily's phone. She listened without interrupting, just nodding occasionally, her eyes getting sharper with each detail. When I finished, she set down her cup with a decisive click. "Then we work the clock." Those 4 words hit me like a shot of adrenaline. I felt something in my spine straighten. Thin and shaky, but definitely there. "What do you mean, work the clock?" I asked. "What's special about year's end?" Helen reached for the calendar hanging by her phone. Her finger traced down to a specific date. But before she could speak, we heard Mom's front door open across the street. You ever notice how the worst conversations happen over the most normal meals? There I was, picking at my eggs. Benedict while Mom chatted about her garden club like she hadn't just tried to steal my house right out from under me. The brunch place was packed, lots of families doing their Sunday thing. Nobody would have guessed we were in the middle of our own private war. "Laura, you're not eating," Mom said, dabbing her lips with a napkin. "Is something wrong with your hollandaise?" "Just a little rich for me," I replied, pushing the plate away. My stomach was too knotted for food anyway. But I kept my face neutral, remembering Helen's words from earlier. Don't tip your hand. The minute that endless brunch wrapped up, I made some excuse about running errands and headed straight back to Helen's. She was waiting for me with a stack of papers on her kitchen table and that same dark coffee from this morning. "First things first," Helen said, spreading out what looked like printouts from the county records office. "Your mother's been busy." I leaned in, scanning the documents. There it was in black and white, a power of attorney form dated 3 years ago, right after my divorce. I remembered signing it. Mom had insisted it was just in case something happened. The words, Agent Evelyn Bennett, jumped out at me like they were printed in neon. "Now here's the interesting part," Helen continued, tapping the fine print at the bottom. "This POA has an expiration date. Most don't, but yours does." My heart started racing. "When?" December 31st, midnight. Helen's eyes met mine. That's why Mark was so specific about year's end in his phone call. Once the clock strikes 12 on New Year's Eve, your mother loses all authority to sign anything in your name. I grabbed a sticky note from Helen's desk and wrote it down. POA expires 12/31, 11:59 p.m. Just seeing it there made everything clearer. This wasn't just about the house, though God knows that was bad enough. This was about my whole life. Without stable housing, custody arrangements could get messy. And the humiliation of having my own family declare me incompetent, that would follow me forever. Okay, I said, pulling out my phone. Let's inventory what we've got. Together we made a list. I had photos of those transfer documents from Mom's magazine stack. The screenshots from Emily's phone showed the whole manipulation. Mark's fake warnings about foreclosure, Mom's pressure about stability, all of it. Every text had a timestamp. Every photo had metadata. It's a good start, Helen said. But we need more. She was right. The screenshots were damning, but I'd taken them without permission. We needed something clean, something that couldn't be challenged. And we needed Emily's side of the story, recorded somewhere official. No confrontations, Helen said firmly, like she was reading my mind. Everything on paper, everything documented. Let them think they're winning until they've lost. I nodded, remembering how it felt finding those transfer papers. Paper doesn't shout back, I said. Paper doesn't cry. The rest of the afternoon slipped away as we planned our next moves. Around dusk, I headed back to Mom's house, trying to look appropriately subdued for someone who'd just had a difficult brunch with her mother. The living room was dim when I walked in, but I could hear Mark's voice coming from the speakers of Mom's phone on the coffee table. He was talking to someone about banking details. Yes, we'll need clean title by the first week of January, he was saying. The current owner is temporarily indisposed. My blood boiled, but I kept quiet, sliding my phone out of my pocket and hitting record. That's when Emily appeared in the patio doorway, her face half lit by the setting sun. She looked so young suddenly, too young to be caught in the middle of all this. But there she was, and here I was, recording her uncle as he tried to steal her home. You know what's funny about betrayal? How quiet it gets once you stop fighting it. I spent the next week moving like a ghost through my own life, gathering proof while they thought I was gathering my surrender. Every morning, I'd wake up early and export another batch of message threads from my phone to my laptop. Each little ding of a successful transfer felt like ammunition being loaded. You ever notice how your phone keeps track of everything? Times, dates, locations. It's all there if you know where to look. I created a new email folder labeled Legal Prep and started forwarding everything there. Maya's call log from the birthday party went in first. 3 minutes and 14 seconds of warning. Funny how a moment that short can change everything. The texts from Mom were the worst to read through. They followed this weird pattern, like someone had given her talking points. We're just trying to help. This is for the best. Sometimes love means making hard choices. Each one matched Mark's timeline perfectly. Almost too perfectly, if you ask me. By Wednesday, I had enough digital proof to sink a battleship, but I needed something rawer, something honest. That's when I texted Emily. Hot cocoa date tonight? Just us? She showed up looking nervous, picking at her sleeve the way she used to do in middle school. I made her favorite. Extra marshmallows, touch of cinnamon, and just let her be. Sometimes silence does more work than questions ever could. Mom, she finally said, you know we're just worried about you, right? I took a slow sip. Tell me more about that. Well, like Uncle Mark said, with the housing market being so volatile. She trailed off, frowning slightly. And the way interest rates are affecting property values. I nodded, watching her recite Mark's economics lesson like it was a book report she hadn't quite memorized. Remember when your kids were little, and you could tell when they were repeating something another kid had said at school? Same thing, just with higher stakes. Emily, I said softly, did you ever feel pressed to help with all this? Her eyes got that glassy look, you know the one, where tears are building but pride's holding them back. I just want stability, she whispered, but it sounded more like a question than an answer. I pulled a blank piece of paper from my purse and slid it across the table with a pen. Write what you felt, I told her. Not what they told you to feel. Her hand shook a little as she picked up the pen. She held it over the paper for what felt like forever, that nib hovering like a bird that couldn't decide where to land. I didn't push. Some truths need time to find their way to paper. Later that night, I spread everything out on Helen's kitchen table. She had this old 3-hole punch that made the most satisfying chunk sound as we added each new piece of evidence to the binder. Chunk. The text message logs. Chunk. The property transfer photos. Chunk. Emily's handwritten statement. Helen worked like a surgeon, each document placed just so, everything labeled and dated. The steady rhythm of that hole punch felt like a heartbeat, bringing life back into my case one page at a time. This is good, Helen said, adjusting her reading glasses. This tells a story they can't easily explain away. My phone buzzed then, one of those calendar alerts I'd set up. 2 weeks to POA expiry, it read. 2 weeks until Mom's legal power over my life expired. 2 weeks to hold everything together. I was about to respond when someone knocked on the front door. Through Helen's gauzy curtains, I could see Mom's silhouette on the porch, perfectly framed like a warning. The knock came again, more insistent this time. Helen squeezed my arm and whispered, "Remember, paper, trails, not confrontation." I nodded and headed for the door, my phone already recording in my pocket. Mom stood there with that smile she uses when she's about to ask for something she knows she shouldn't. "Laura, dear," she said, waving a blue folder. "I was hoping to catch you. There's just a quick insurance form I need you to sign before the holiday rush. You know that feeling when someone's trying to sell you something that's too good to be true? That's exactly how my stomach felt right then." "Insurance form?" I asked, keeping my voice casual. "What kind?" "Oh, just a standard policy update. The agent needs it processed before the new year." She flipped open the folder, holding out a pen. "It'll only take a minute." I glanced at Helen's grandfather clock through the window. Its steady tick-tock seemed to whisper, "Stall, stall, stall." "Mind if I read it over first?" I reached for the A folder, but she pulled it back slightly. "It's rather lengthy," she said, her smile tightening at the corners. "I can summarize the important parts." I shook my head, thinking about that recording in my pocket. "Sorry, Mom, but you know me. I like to review everything myself. Financial habits die hard, right?" I gave a little laugh, like it was just another one of my quirks. The smile stayed frozen on her face, but her eyes, ever seen frost, spread across a window? That's what happened there. "Of course," she said finally. "I'll have Mark drop it by tomorrow with a proper explanation." After she left, I could still feel that Arctic stare. Helen appeared beside me with her phone already out. "My cousin's law firm," she said, showing me the screen. "They handle estate disputes. I called while you were at the door." 2 hours later, I was sitting across from Sandra Chen, Esquire, spreading our evidence across her desk like playing cards in a high-stakes game. I laid down Mark's recorded conversation with his banker first. "And here's everything else," I said, sliding over our binder. Text messages, photos of the transfer documents, timestamps, all of it. She flipped through it methodically, pausing at Emily's handwritten note. My heart squeezed as she read my daughter's words about feeling cornered by the adults she trusted, about being told her mother needed help, whether she wanted it or not. "This is good," Sandra said, tapping Emily's statement. "Personal testimony carries weight, especially from a family member they tried to manipulate." "Can we stop them?" I asked, "before New Year's Eve?" She nodded, reaching for a legal pad. "We can file an emergency petition to freeze any property transfers until there's a full hearing. But timing is crucial. We need everything filed before their deadline." I signed the retainer agreement while she made a checklist. Sworn declarations, supporting exhibits, notarized signatures. Each item she wrote felt like another brick in the wall I was building between me and their schemes. Back at Helen's that night, We spread everything across her kitchen table again. The printer hummed steadily as we assembled the final affidavits, the smell of fresh ink mixing with our coffee. "Almost there," Helen murmured, 3-hole punching another stack. I glanced at her clock as it struck midnight, December 30th, just over 24 hours until Mom's power of attorney expired. I set 2 alarms on my phone, then carefully placed our completed binder by Helen's front door. One last page was printing, the exhibit list for the court filing. That's when the printer made that sound. You know the one, that awful grinding noise that means paper's stuck somewhere it shouldn't be. The exhibit list was jammed halfway through, crumpled like my nerves. Have you ever watched a printer jam clear itself in slow motion? That's how it felt at Helen's house as the sun crept up on New Year's Eve. Each crumpled corner of that exhibit list smoothed out like it was teasing me, taking its sweet time while my heart did jumping jacks. "Come on, you stubborn thing," muttered, carefully working the paper free. The warm smell of toner mixed with Helen's fresh coffee, making my empty stomach do flips. "Everything good?" Helen called from her kitchen. "Just fighting with modern technology," I answered, finally pulling the last wrinkled sheet free. "Got it. You know those moments when time suddenly shifts into high gear?" That was my morning. I grabbed the binder and practically flew to the parcel store, praying I'd beat the usual crowd of procrastinators sending their last-minute New Year's packages. Luck was with me, for once. The notary, a gentle-faced woman named Patricia, was just unlocking the door. "Early bird catches the worm?" she said with a knowing smile. "More like desperate mom catches her breath," I replied, spreading our documents across her counter. The steady chunk of her notary stamp felt like victory bells. The courthouse was another story. Ever notice how government buildings always smell the same? That mix of paper, floor cleaner, and anxiety? I stood in line at the clerk's window, watching the clock tick past noon, clutching our binder like it was made of gold. "Filing?" the clerk asked, barely looking up. "Emergency petition," I said, sliding the stack through the window. My fingers trembled as she flipped through the pages. Each second felt like an hour until, finally, that beautiful red received stamp came down. I started to breathe again, started to smile. Then, "Judge Ramirez needs live testimony to support this written statement," the clerk announced, tapping Emily's note. "He's on duty today until 4. My relief evaporated faster than spilled coffee on a hot sidewalk. Emily's written words weren't enough. She'd need to tell her story in person, today, before the clock struck midnight. Back at Helen's house, I stared at my phone, trying to compose the perfect text to Emily. Nothing too suspicious, nothing that would send her running to Mark or Mom. "Keep it simple," Helen advised, setting out index cards on her kitchen table. "Like we did with those witness statements for the homeowners association disputes." I nodded, typing, "Hot cocoa at Helen's? Need some honest girl talk? Love you." Helen and I spent the next hour writing questions on those cards, each one designed to gently lead Emily toward the truth without pushing too hard. 20 years of handling neighborhood disputes had taught Helen exactly how to help nervous witnesses find their voice. "Remember," she said, shuffling the cards, "let her talk. Don't interrupt, just like we practiced." I placed Emily's favorite rose-pattern mug at what had become her spot at Helen's table. The one with the tiny chip on the sill, rim from when she was 12 and tried to juggle dishes. The cocoa powder waited nearby, ready to be stirred into warm milk. My phone buzzed. A message from Emily's phone, but Mark's words jumped off the screen. "Turn your location off and come to Grandma's house. Family meeting." I showed Helen the text, my hands shaking. "He knows something's up." "Or he's just being cautious," Helen said, but her expression didn't match her calm tone. "The filing won't be in the system yet." Outside, a car door slammed with the kind of finality that makes your spine straighten. Helen and I looked at each other across those carefully arranged index cards, both knowing everything hinged on whatever happened next. When I opened Helen's door, Emily stood there looking like she'd walked straight out of a winter painting. Cheeks flushed pink from the cold, breath coming out in little clouds. but her shoulders, they were wound tighter than a spring. "Come in, sweetheart," I said, stepping aside. Helen made fresh cocoa. You ever notice how some silences feel heavier than others? This one had weight as Emily slipped past me, her boots leaving tiny melting snowflakes on Helen's welcome mat. Helen busied herself in the kitchen while I guided Emily to the table. Those index cards lay face down where we'd left them, looking innocent as birthday wishes. I poured the cocoa into her rose-patterned mug, watching the steam curl up between us. "Mom?" Her voice cracked a little. "What's going on?" I wrapped my hands around my own mug, letting the warmth steady me. "I need to understand what's been happening, honey. Not what anyone told you to say. Just your truth." She stared into her cocoa like it might hold answers. "Uncle Mark said, 'Take your time,'" I murmured when she faltered. The Afi story spilled out slowly at first, then faster. Mark had cornered her after school one day, talking about foreclosure risks and financial instability. Evelyn had followed up with daily calls about grown-ups who know how to act. They'd shown her paperwork I'd never seen, graphs that made no sense. "They said if we didn't act fast," Emily's voice hitched. "They made it sound like we'd lose everything." I kept my face neutral, though my heart was doing somersaults. "Did you feel pressured?" "Cornered," she whispered, and that word hit me like a punch. The same word from her written statement, but this time I heard the fear behind it. "Emily," I said carefully, "would you be willing to let me record what you just told me, just on my phone?" She looked up, surprised. "Why?" "Because sometimes clarity protects everyone," I said, echoing Helen's words from earlier. "Even the people who think they don't need protecting." After a long moment, she nodded. I pulled out my phone, set it to record, and placed it on the table between us. Helen quietly slipped a fresh mug of cocoa in front of Emily as I asked her to state her name and the date. The next 5 minutes were like watching my daughter grow up all over again. She spoke clearly, carefully, describing exactly how Mark and Evelyn had approached her, what they'd said, how they'd made her feel. When she finished, her eyes were wet, but her voice was steady. "Thank you," I said simply, stopping the recording. No triumph, no accusations, just gratitude for her honesty. My phone buzzed almost immediately with a text from the courthouse. Due to the holiday schedule, Judge Ramirez could see us at 5:30 p.m. My stomach did a little flip, cutting it close to midnight, but we had time. "I should get you back to Grandma's," I told Emily, already calculating minutes and miles in my head. "I'll pick you up at 5, okay? We need to make a quick stop somewhere." She nodded, finishing her cocoa. I didn't mention court. No need to add pressure or give her time to worry. The drive back to Evelyn's was quiet, but not heavy like before. Emily squeezed my hand before she got out, and that simple gesture nearly broke me. Back at Helen's, we printed the transcript while my phone charged. The gas light on my car had started blinking during the drive, another detail to juggle. The clock rolled past 3 as the printer hummed. "Time enough," Helen said, sorting papers into folders. "Barely." I watched the transcript pages stack up, each one another brick in the wall between my family and that midnight deadline. My throat felt tight, but my hands were steady. I pulled into Jim's Gas and Go with my gauge needle buried deep in, the red. The ancient pump clicked and whirred, counting up dollars I couldn't spare. But sometimes you pay what you have to. Know what I mean? The courthouse steps looked steeper in the winter dusk, shadows stretching like fingers across the worn granite. My lawyer, Sandra Martinez, met me at the top, tablet in hand and reading glasses perched on her nose. She had that focused look I'd seen on Emily's face during math tests. All business, no doubt. "We've got 40 minutes before Judge Ramirez," she said, ushering me inside. The marble hallway echoed with our footsteps, empty except for a janitor pushing a buffer and a few last-minute clerks clutching folders. Sandra spread our exhibits across a wooden bench. The screenshots, Emily's written statement, Mark's recorded call with the banker. I handed her the fresh video from Helen's kitchen, and she nodded as she watched it, making Small notes on her legal pad. A muffled boom made me jump. Just early fireworks somewhere past downtown. Funny how everything sounds like a warning when you're on edge. "All rise," the bailiff called at exactly 5:30. Judge Ramirez looked exactly like you'd expect for New Year's Eve duty, tired but sharp, reading glasses hanging from a chain around her neck. Sandra laid out our case like she was telling a bedtime story. The pressure on Emily, the hidden documents, the recorded manipulation. When she played Emily's video statement, I watched the judge's eyebrows inch higher with each detail. "And you have evidence of attempted transfer preparations?" Judge Ramirez asked. "Yes, Your Honor." Sandra pulled up Mark's recorded call about clean title and the time-stamped photos of those transfer documents from Evelyn's house. The judge reviewed everything, making small sounds that had my stomach doing flips. Another firework popped somewhere outside, and I swear I aged 10 years waiting for her to speak. "Given the evidence of coordination and the imminent expiration of the power of attorney," she finally said, "I'm issuing a temporary restraining order freezing any property transfers pending a full hearing, effective immediately." My knees went wobbly. Sandra steadied me with a hand on my elbow as the judge's clerk typed, rapidly, generating the order. 5 minutes later, it was signed, stamped, and being uploaded to the court's electronic system. I stepped into the hallway, needing air. Through the tall windows, I could see the last purple edge of sunset fading to black. A notification sound echoed from the bench where Evelyn and Mark sat with their phones. They must have been waiting to pounce the moment the POA window opened at midnight. Mark's face went from red to white as he read the order. I watched him tap frantically at his tablet, probably calculating how this would play at his firm. He managed other people's money for a living. Attempted property theft wasn't exactly a good look. You know that silence when you walk into your house after a long trip? That comfortable quiet that wraps around you like a blanket? That's what greeted me when I finally got home. I placed the court order on my kitchen table, my shield, my proof, my line in the sand. I texted Emily. "Safe. Come home." My phone buzzed almost immediately, but it wasn't Emily. It was Helen, forwarding a news alert that made my hand shake. Breaking. Senior investment manager placed on administrative leave. Marcus Bennett of Steadfast Financial under internal review for outside conduct conflicting with fiduciary duties. I stared at those words as more fireworks popped and sizzled in the distance. The clock on my microwave blinked 11:47 p.m., 13 minutes until their power of attorney expired for good. Wood creaked on my front porch, that loose board by the swing that I'd been meaning to fix. Footsteps approached, slow and hesitant. I stood there in my kitchen, the court order under my palm, watching my doorknob turn. I opened the door, and there stood Emily, her face pale in the porch light. Her coat was buttoned wrong, like she'd dressed in a hurry. Without a word, she stepped inside, snowflakes melting in her hair. The court order lay on the coffee table where I'd left it. Emily picked it up with trembling fingers, her eyes scanning the legal language. I watched her shoulders tighten, then slowly drop as understanding sank in. "Sit down, honey," I said, patting the spot next to me on the couch. "It's been a long day for both of us." She sank into the cushions, still clutching the paper. "Mom, I didn't know it would go this far. Uncle Mark said—" My phone buzzed, cutting her off. Another message from Helen. "Check the church circle chat. Evelyn's reputation is in free fall." I opened the link to find dozens of messages condemning exploitation of family under legal pretense. These women had known my mother for decades. Their judgment would sting worse than any court order. "Listen," I told Emily, setting the phone aside. "What happened here? The pressure, the secrets, the legal games? That wasn't love. Love stays when the pressure stops. Love doesn't need papers and deadlines." She nodded, wiping her eyes with her sleeve. just like she used to do after skinned knees in elementary school. I sent Helen a quick thank you text, then forwarded the court's decision to Sandra. Her response came back immediately. Marks, administrative leave is now termination. The documents become public record tomorrow. Right on cue, my phone lit up with a message from Evelyn. I hope you're satisfied. You know what? I was, but I didn't need to say that. Some silences speak volumes. I let her words sit there unanswered, like all those cutting remarks she'd made over the years. The mantel clock ticked past midnight, official end of their power of attorney. In the kitchen, I found what I'd bought earlier, a single red rose, its petals dark as wine. I slipped it into the crystal vase Helen had given me last Christmas, the one that caught light like diamonds. The rose stood tall against the white wall, defiant and beautiful. Its scent filled the room, sweet, but with thorns underneath. Just like victory. I looked at Emily, then at the deed still safely in my name, and felt something settle in my chest. They tried to bury me, I said softly, but I grew stronger roots. Emily reached for my hand, and I squeezed back. Outside, the last New Year's fireworks faded into silence, leaving only stars in a clear winter sky.